Friends and lovers, welcome to the Jimpressions for Kuni II Revenant Kingdom, which is a sequel, if you haven't worked out from the title, to Ni no Kuni. Ni no Kuni was one of my favourite games of the year it came out, and possibly among my favourite of what we call Japanese RPGs. JRPGs, if you will, if you like the shorthand. The original, I'm specifically talking about, aside from the main character going NEATO the whole time, which drove me effing mad, I did really like it. And in truth, I like Ni no Kuni II a lot as well, but nowhere near as much as the first one. To its credit, Ni no Kuni II shows that this is a series that doesn't just want to spin its wheels and go nowhere. The first one took some heavy influence from games like Pokemon, Digimon, that sort of thing, and blended it into a more standardized JRPG format. While Ni no Kuni II does the same thing, but instead of Pokemon, it's very heavily, almost shamelessly inspired by Little King's story. So it's less about using monsters to do the fighting for you, you're more hands-on in that regard, and it's more about building up a kingdom, while also engaging in some large-scale battles featuring the characters in super deformed modes like we see on the world map, just to eliminate any doubt as to where Ni no Kuni gets its inspiration from here. We'll take a look at kingdom building and the battles for the large-scale stuff a little bit later, but for right now we'll talk about the basics. Starting with the story of Ni no Kuni II is complete cheesecake. Total and utter cornball, almost overtly twee in nature. Now, the first game had its fair share of moments. I mean, the fact that the main character went NEATO all the time was bad enough, but here, it's certainly more intense. As twee as the first one got, this one, revolving around King Evan and his wish to create a world free of war, which, by the way, not only involves a lot of war in its own right, but also factors in world domination on Evan's part, just gets a bit too mawkish. That said, the game does have plenty of charm going for itself. The English localization in particular has those British voiceovers with Welsh accents and Scottish accents, which seems to be a bit of a running thing with localized JRPGs now. And the overt silliness of the whole thing is sometimes played up to good effect. There are some nice little comedy moments here, not enough to have you raucously laughing out loud, but there's enough to keep you smiling. And as far as the combat goes, it's pretty good. Certainly very action-focused, with a heavier emphasis on needing to block and dodge, although the blocking and the dodging is a little bit awkward. You'll often find yourself trapped in an attack animation or a commanding animation where you're trying to make your little higgledies do stuff. We'll get onto higgledies. But for the most part, it is enjoyable. It's fun to just grind, which you can't often say about RPGs. Not that you really need to grind all that much, if at all, because it's really not that challenging a game. The hack and slash combat is fun enough to be worth just popping in and leveling up a little bit, which is helped along by the heavier loot focus this time around. Don't worry, there aren't loot boxes, I'm not going to drop that on ya, but Ni no Kuni II is definitely one for fans of a dungeon crawler approach to the acquisition of power. The game will drown you in swords and spears and axes and guns even, and each party member can equip 3 melee weapons and 1 projectile weapon, the nature of which will be determined by the character in question. Each weapon has its own gauge that increases when you take and give out damage, and when that gauge reaches 100%, you can unleash a special attack. So the idea of having 3 weapons is to switch between them as each gauge fills. You can set the weapon switching to be semi-automatic, automatic or manual, so you get a level of control over whether you want to directly switch the weapons and choose what you want to do, or have the game itself switch each weapon when they're ready, which I eventually ended up doing because I got no real joy from manually switching them. If a skill's ready, a skill's ready. I don't get any added satisfaction or a level of being challenged by just swapping the swords out myself. But it does mean you get given a lot of swords. And speaking as a fan of what colloquially get called loot-em-ups, I got no problem with that. The weapons drop, not just in abundance, but with varying degrees of rarity, so if you see anything shining in red or purple, you get a little bit more excited, and that's always a good time. You'll notice after each victory the sheer volume of shit we pick up, fledgling feathers, coarse cord, you do get a nice cabbage at some point. Classic cabbage, that's what they're called. You can get classic cabbages. And most of that stuff's used for crafting. When you get into the kingdom building stuff, you can eventually upgrade as well as make your own weapons, your own recipes for food and stuff, which will have different effects. Just all sorts of stuff. If you like getting lots of shite, then Ni no Kuni 2 is most definitely for you. And I do like getting loads of shite, so Ni no Kuni 2 Revenant Kingdom is somewhat up my alley. Like I said, it's not the very best. There are better games to play if I just want loot. There are better games to play, and those better games include the first Ni no Kuni if I want a JRPG style experience. This is not to say this is a bad game, however. It's just a struggle to live up to the original, the first Ni no Kuni, which was, in my mind, an absolute modern classic. But this one really is in its shadow, if I'm to be perfectly brutally honest with you. So here's the kingdom building mode, which, like pretty much everything in Ni no Kuni 2, is quite good, just not quite as good as the stuff it apes, in this case, Little King's Story or any other similar kingdom building game. It's a fairly linear process, and your options aren't really in depth. You just plonk down buildings where you're told to, assign staff, you get a choice there, and various upgrades and things you research that make the rest of the game more easy, or certainly give you more tools and tricks and things to tinker with. So you see here that this one in particular, Barracks, helps you with battles, which we'll show you some footage of. The Explorers Guild is a building that helps you around the world. I've unlocked Brisk Stroll there, which is moving around faster, and there are other things such as being able to see loot in the map better. These are Higgledies. These are little characters that help you in battle. You can unlock them by finding them in stones, little higgledy stones dotted around the world, and you can also make those in the kingdom as well. And you issue commands to those during regular battle, not this stuff, but during regular battles, and tell them what to do. They usually act autonomously, but sometimes they'll have a special command ready, and you can go into their circle, press X, and they'll do the thing after an animation to command them, which will often get you hit because you're too busy stuck in a command animation. But anyway, this is very, very similar to a Pikmin or a Little King's Story, but it's incredibly stripped down. You do get options. You can initiate special tactics, which is, you see it in the corner there, you press R2, and you just press a button to perform a skill like you would in regular combat. Or you can hold down X to make your units move faster, or hold down square to make them attack more fast, I could have just said faster again, or swifter, more swiftly, or whatever. There are many ways I could have said that better than I said that, but let's continue talking about this. This one is a fairly early battle. It's still got some tutorial things popping up. Like any good JRPG, you still get tutorials hours and hours into the experience. But as you can see, it's not like there's a great tactical wealth going on here. It is mostly just steering your units, which you all control in one big clump, steering your units into the enemy units and letting them just whack on them. And victory is determined mostly by just who's more powerful, which force is more leveled than the other one, and as with a lot of things in Ni no Kuni 2, typically that's you. I realise I sound like I've been dunking on this game, and that's not my intention. I do think this is a very good game, I keep trying to stress that. And I may simply be hypercritical because I did adore that first game so much. But then that is the point of criticism. One theoretically criticises because one cares, and I do certainly care. And I can't emphasise enough that I've had lots of fun with this game, plenty of fun. A lot of what it does may be stripped down compared to the stuff it mimics, but that doesn't mean it's not enjoyable. It's fun to steer these little units about and smash other ones up. The hack and slash is enjoyable, the loot gathering is great, the story, while cheesy, does have its moments, and visually this is exactly the kind of game I like because, as I've said many times before, nothing shows off the HD era better than bright, colourful games. I would certainly recommend fans of the first game check it out, but I would add the caveat, I'm finding this one a struggle to stick to as compared to the first one, which I could not put down for the life of me. That one had me practically besotted. Absolutely adored it, kept playing it. One of those sorts of games you think about even when you're not playing it and you're really looking forward to the next time you get a session in, but this one, Ni no Kuni 2, just does not have that same wow factor, does not have that ability to grab me, pull me in and keep me there. But by no means could this be classified as a bad game, or even a mediocre one. It just isn't quite NEATO. Still though, you probably will like it. I did like it.